Greetings and welcome to another episode of Super Speak Sundays. I'm your host, James the Orator. And as you know, hey, we say it all the time, but we take ordinary people who have gone to do extraordinary things. And today we're excited about our guest. I call him the Monopoly Man. You remember when you grew up and the family or the friends played Monopoly and you got all those houses and you were the winner? We even stepped up our game here recently and bought a game called Cash Flow by Robert Kiyosaki. And it's probably Monopoly on steroids, but it works. So if you haven't checked it out, and I'm not plugging because he's not paying me no money, but hey, it's a hell of a game, and you definitely want to try it out. Let me introduce our guest again. I call him the Monopoly Man. Let me read his bio here. LaDarryl Woods grew up in Gary, Indiana, where he witnessed his grandmother's business savvy as she acquired multiple real estate properties. What further intrigued his interest in real estate investment was his dad and other family members who acquired land outside of Millington, Tennessee. LaDarryl has over 15 years of experience in investing in off-market real estate with the main focus of single-family and duplex properties. As a result of his strong foundation, he founded DNA Investors and High Ground Global Investments. He specializes in fix and flipping, wholesaling, and rental properties. His company currently serves 4 markets: Dallas-Fort Worth, Northwest Indiana, Killeen, Texas, and now on the map, Atlanta, Georgia. Over the past few years, DNA Investors and High Ground Global Investments have scaled the business and have now focused on wholesaling off-market properties in which homeowners may be distressed, tired landlords, or they may have lost a loved one, or they may be in foreclosure, or other unfortunate circumstances. One thing LaDarryl wants you to know is DNA Investors, they add value to both clients and buyers. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our guest today, Mr. LaDarryl Woods. Brother Woods.
Yo, how's it going?
Hey, man, thank you for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. We go a long way back, those days at the hospital and just talking about, our dreams and our aspirations. And, as we look, man, so many years down the road, things have definitely manifest. So we want to thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, man. I'm honored to be here. As you say, we go way back, and man, it's just like connecting with my old Brody again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the hospital to IUN, the whole shebang, man. It was always value in every conversation, man. So I'm loving what you got here, man.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Hey, customarily, what we do is we start each show with a quote. And so with this quote, I hand selected a quote just for you because you're in the investment game. And so once I read the quote, we just want to get your initial reaction. And so your quote says, real estate investing, even on a very small scale, remains a tried and true means of building an individual's cash flow and wealth. And again, we mentioned this guy's name earlier, Robert Kiyosaki. What are your thoughts regarding that quote?
So it's funny you say that because that was one of my first major mentors in the game. He mentored me from afar. So What I think about that quote, building an individual's cash flow and wealth, it creates legacy. It creates generational wealth. It also it takes you out of just looking for the actual 9 to 5 of someone giving you something, but it also teaches you how to create a positive cash flow to do a lot of other different things. Like real estate can be the catalyst to actually moving into other different businesses, and most successful real estate investors started out in real estate and then they moved over to a lot of different other things. So cash flow is king, so mailbox money when you're not working for it, and it's actually working for you, it's no other feeling better than that, to know that you can open up your account and see, profits coming in where you're not working for the money, but you're getting you're creating passive income. So
wow. Hey, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. And you hear so many people talking about, passive income, being able to make money while you sleep. Take us back to, because again, I remember when you were working and you were trying to figure things out, and I think you were just starting a family early on. At what point in your life did you say it's time for me to do something different?
That's a good question. I could always go back and revert even before my military days. I had a strong work ethic because of my dad and because of my mom. Mm-hmm. They instilled, hard work, and I saw them were like some of the first entrepreneurs really I saw, but we just didn't take it to the next level because, it was like they were limited in what they could do. Mm-hmm. But I started out cutting grass. I had paper routes. I did all of those different things as a kid to earn money. So part of that was like, okay, that was my start point, a good work ethic. Then as I went on into the military, I did 6 years active, 6 reserve. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you this. When I moved off of base and got my own property, real estate was something that always intrigued me, but I lived in an apartment complex with multiple apartments in there. And it was just mind-blowing to me how I was paying rent to this apartment complex and to the property management. And I used to take it a step further, like, man, who owns all of this? Who's the one that's like collecting all of this money, from us, as renters? And, and that kind of sparked my brain to kind of like, get into it a little bit more, understand it more. And I always wanted something different, but I knew I had to have a mindset shift because, I was a knucklehead. It was always in the back of my head that I knew it was something bigger for me.
Right.
But that's kind of what really sparked my brain, but I still kind of wasn't moving in the right circles to get to that level. Okay. But now, it was mine.
In your bio, we read, or I read, that your grandmother at an early age had real estate property, and then your father also had some property, and your grandfather in Tennessee. As a young child, did you even understand what they were doing, or did they invite you in to say, "Hey, son, one day, we want you to do this"? What was that like growing up and having people in real estate?
So yeah, it didn't really intrigue me at the time as a youngster, like, because let me say this, like my grandmother, rest in soul, rest in peace her soul. She was like one of the first like people who I saw do single family homes, and she transferred that over to her families. But my mom
around what year? Around what year was that? Around what year?
I want to say like that was like in maybe the late 80s. Okay. 80s, 70s, end of the 70s, 80s era. Okay. And she would get these properties from people who liked her, and they just willed them over to her and stuff like that because they were leaving and they didn't have loved ones to take over them and stuff like that. And she just had this radiant spirit about her that so she was getting like people who either they had lost loved ones or they couldn't afford the home no more, and she was taking these homes and she was giving them to she kept them in the family, and then she was like trying to give them to my mom and my aunts and all of them, but they really didn't know what they had at the time. So, we had our own home, and just because you had your own home, we didn't really understand what it was really all about. So we ended up losing those properties, not having any of those properties. So that's kind of how I created DNA Investors, because from seeing that and then seeing my dad and them go down here and have all this land, and then it got taken by the government and all that, and we all had families I had stories like that from my family in Tennessee, my family in Alabama. So it all kind of came together that I'm gonna be the recipient of everything that we lost is gonna be restored back through us. And that's kind of how DNA came across, because it's already in my DNA and in everybody else's. It's in our DNA, you know. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I got the name DNA.
yeah. I was going to ask you about that, but now I understand that, you know, grandmother started and then father, and so yeah, it's definitely a part of the core of who you are, your fabric of who you are. So you have all this information, you're not understanding, and then you decide you're going to restore. You change, you know, your circle, or maybe not really change it, but I mean you identify that there are some other gifts that you have, and you need to be able to explore those. And so talk about your very first property. And I know what that feels like, because the first time that I made a decision to buy a property, man, it was probably one of the most scariest feelings I'd ever had. I'd already had my home, but then I was, you know, looking to buy an investment property. So talk about what you went through and what that looked like purchasing your first property.
So that's a good question, man. I'm glad you asked that, because one, I get mentored a lot I get a lot of mentors asking me, like, you know, hey, I want to get into this business. You know, it seems easy. HGTV make it look easy.
Yeah.
Of course, we know how, you know, HGTV go out and, you know, all of this stuff is pretty much funded and they run it up and fix these houses up. But let me jump into this. So this is good because the first property, I'm gonna tell a little story about it. Okay. I was following Robert Kiyosaki. I was trying to understand his method. I was also trying to understand, a while back, it was starting to be outdated. That was Carlton Sheets. So
yeah,
both of those two gurus were really great, but they didn't buy properties in underserved communities like I lived in.
Right.
So that's kind of where the gap was at. And as I learned a lot, I'm frustrated because these properties that I'm seeing with them and the things they got, they own like Rodale Drive in Florida and all these, you know, A neighborhoods and B neighborhoods. And I grew up in Glen Park back in the days, you know, before everything happened and white flight and all of those things.
Right.
You know, so we went from maybe a B neighborhood to maybe a C and then maybe a D neighborhood.
Yeah,
I'm from the east side of Glen Park.
Right.
So investing for me when I wanted to start out was like totally different. Okay. So I'm looking at properties in my neighborhood. I'm looking at properties in my community and in my area. How do I make this work in my area, in my community where I live? So I find a property. Let me back up a little bit. Before I find that property, it was a situation. The situation was we had a guy that moved on our block, on the block right around the corner from us back then. And this was some years ago.
Right.
He was from the south side of Chicago. He was kind of more like, you know, flexing a lot and trying to like, you know, run everybody and trying to be the Debo of our neighborhood.
Right.
My dad got into it with him. I got into it with him, and I was like, man, you know, something gonna happen eventually, because, you know, it was just, you know, he just running around just like, you know, playing tough guy. So him and my neighbor down the street, his name was Smitty. You know, Smitty he kept to himself. He ain't bothered nobody, you know, and nothing like that. But, you know, if somebody brought it to him, he was ready to, you know, handle it.
Right.
So they got into a situation, in an argument or whatever. I think they were playing cards and had some people down there. Just down on the corner of my block. Right. But at that time, I think I had moved out of that neighborhood, because I think I had moved as I had family and all that. So my mindset was different, but it was still my neighborhood. So long and short of it, these two guys, they get into it, and Smitty killed him in the house.
Oh, wow.
So the ambulance, police come, all of that. You know, they say the guy tried to overpower him and jump on him or whatever, and, you know, he let him have it.
Right.
So that was my first property.
Really?
That because his sisters and them was trying to actually get bail money for him to get out.
Right.
So I knew the property needed a little work. It was abandoned for probably, I want to say maybe a year. Probably
Right.
banged
Okay.
it for a year while he was
Okay.
while he was in jail and trying to get an attorney and all that.
Right.
I was working in the steel mill, in the steel industry. I left the hospital,
Right.
and then I went over to the steel mill, and I was also going to school at IUN.
Right.
So, with that said, his sister really was trying to get the house sold. And I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the cash right out to just buy it. She was trying to get enough bail money for him and all of that.
Right.
So she wanted about, I think, $20,000 for this property.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started thinking creatively.
Okay.
I got a 401k. It's sitting.
Mm-hmm.
I work in the mill, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Took the money from the 401k, negotiated the deal with her, got her 15K, pulled 15K out the 401k, and bought my first property. Rehabbed the property, had a couple other challenges. Again, the properties I'm buying is not like the properties that I'm getting into, that I'm seeing into it.
Right.
Had got the property almost completely ready. Had someone come in and bust all of the drywall out just to get copper. You know what that was?
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
And I was almost
so cash that in.
So I'm almost complete with the job.
Yeah.
So my streetness and my creativeness and my intelligence on how to actually be a businessman in Gary had all applied together on how to move in this situation. So one, I had two guys that was working for me. One had just finished a halfway house, and I was giving these guys an opportunity to make money. I had a painter, and I had a guy that just did landscaping, and he did a lot of carpentry work. I put him in the property because he didn't have nowhere to go. So I put a cot in there. We got it. Once we had it almost halfway complete. Put him in the property, so he's security now. I got a cot in there. I got him a little small refrigerator, and I got him a TV.
Win-win situation. You mentioned something that I think is key, particularly for people who are watching this watching this podcast. You talked about not having the money to purchase that $20,000 home, and many people probably have an interest in buying homes outright, but they don't know which avenues to take. And we know you're not a financial guy, but kind of talk about some other ways that you've been able to finance properties, because you buy properties all over the state of Texas right now, and you're doing quite well. And so talk about some strategies that you've identified early on when you first started purchasing properties.
So I had to, let me say this too. I had to do it like totally different. So what I had to what I was doing is I would think outside the box.
Okay.
How can I make this happen? And when I pulled that 15 out of my 401k, it was because I was reading what other people were doing.
Okay.
And how they're actually making money work for them. And then, and I'll talk about private lending as that go too, because that has tied into where I'm at now.
Okay.
With doing private lending and then private funding, where you can get 2 or 3 guys that are on the same page, and hey, let's put 5K together, and you got 3 guys that can come in and finance based off of in-house money that you can use where you don't have to go to the bank. So it's a lot of creative ways that, that things like that can be done.
Right.
I wanted to say too that when I got done with that house at 15K that I bought, I was able to go to the bank after it was complete, and I was able to pull 70,000 out of the property.
You only bought it for 15.
15.
Okay.
And that's when I was intrigued, and my wife was intrigued because everybody saw it as, man, that house is, you're not gonna get nothing for that, but I'm that type of person where I can see the end before the beginning,
That's right.
And I saw the potential and what it could be after it's done, and I've always been like that. So I was in school at the time when I had that 70,000 that the bank gave me, and the house was worth about maybe 85 at the time.
Okay.
They asked me, what did I want to walk away with? Now, that was a time when I'm just going into the front of the bank, you know, and now they sending me to the back because, you know, after the appraisal and everything went through and all of that, that let me understand that started helping me too. And I want to make sure I'm hitting this right, but that made me start saying too that the information that we have versus the information that is out there is like we talking about, you know, things that, you know, take money from us. We talking about liabilities. All my coworkers was in Ferrari. I mean, not Ferrari.
Yeah, right.
They was in Corvettes and Range Rovers and stuff like that.
That's
and
right.
I was like, you know, I could have got that, but I was like, nah, I ain't trying to get that right now. I'm trying to get these. I'm trying to get these assets.
Right. Versus
And
liability.
I started realizing that the assets will bring me those other things, you know. And we didn't get taught that in school.
No.
Even in my class, I was going to school for computer programming. You plant the seed for me to go to school.
Yeah, I remember.
I met you there.
Yeah. It's crazy how you talk about you know, assets versus liabilities. You know, people don't understand that mailbox money is what can help you to purchase those other things. You know, you don't get those things off the front. You know, you build a solid foundation, and then you move to, you know, towards those areas. You know, I want to talk a little bit about your business, man, because, you know, once you walk me through. So once you bought this first property and you were intrigued and you had this 70 grand, what was your next move? I mean, did you start the business right away, or what did you do next?
So I did what the typical guy that get this kind of bread, like all of a sudden like that. I was thinking working cap. I used some of it, and to be honest, I didn't keep. I dibbled and dabbed, but I started. This is what I did that I teach on now. I started figuring that I could leverage more of the bank's money.
Right.
So I'm gonna keep this as cash, and then, you know, I'm gonna leverage more of the bank's money when I do these deals, and keep pulling money out of the bank. And the whole real estate bubble of
2008,
8, 9, that happened. I got caught in that.
Oh, wow.
And I almost filed a bankruptcy because at that time I was up to about 6 properties. You know, I had properties in Maryville, you know, behind Myers. I had a duplex back there, you know, and I had a house that I lived in. I had 3 in Gary, you know, so I was just looking at the fact that I was grabbing assets, but at that point, I didn't really have somebody. I really kind of thought I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I tell the good, the bad, and the ugly on this.
That's right.
Because even though I was still generating properties and having cash flow, what happened was I became real estate rich and cash poor.
There you go.
You get what I'm saying?
Right. Cash flow is important.
But I leveraged too much, so I had too many mortgages on top of it. And that was the mistake I made. But fast forward to like 2017, I held on to everything by the skin of my teeth.
Okay.
And everything, what does real estate do? It shoots up in value still. It's still it's still going to move in value.
Right.
Like to this day, we got properties in Gary now that's worth 150, 200K. And that's the secondary market right now.
That's it.
So I held on to those properties, and I was able to liquidate each one of them, which now I'm looking like I probably shouldn't have liquidated them.
You should have held on to them, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, but you know, you live and learn.
It was still a win-win situation. Why? Because my tenants that I had in my Maryville property, they were never late, paid on time, they were older. They paid my mortgage. I cash flowed about $500 on that property. You know, I mean, that's not a bad cash flow.
Right.
Paid my mortgage, and when I walked away with it, I still walked away when I sold the property because they actually bought it. Because I'm also trying to turn renters into homeowners as well.
That's right.
So when they bought that property, I still walked away with over $40,000.
Gotcha.
You know, and it paid before selling.
I
But
want
I had to weather.
Go ahead. You say you had to weather that storm.
That's it.
I
That's it.
understand. Hey, I want to talk about DNA Global Investors. And so you started that business. When did that business come into fruition?
Okay, so DNA started about it's been about a year and a half now. A year and a half. I want to say maybe 2 years, about 2 years right now.
So before then, you didn't really have a business to manage properties. You just kind of manage them on your own.
No, I had. That's where Higher Ground was, and it's abbreviated HG Global Investments.
Okay.
So after I really started diving in and getting into Robert Kiyosaki and then YouTube University and all those things, those were my mentors, because at that time I didn't believe in really paying people to mentor me, but now I understand the value of that. I have 2 mentors now.
Coaching, right.
So I understand the value of that. But HG Global Investments was my first company.
Okay.
So HG Global Investments handle all the rentals.
Okay.
All my rentals now are under Higher Ground Global Investments. That started in 2005.
Okay.
So it's been around since 2005.
How many doors do you have right now?
So right now, since I liquidated everything, I only have 4 right now. I got 4 properties now. I got 2 in Gary, and I got 2 in Gary, and I got 3 in Gary. I got 3 in Gary right now, and I'm working on 1 here that I'm closing on here, and I'm working on another one in Killeen as well that I'm working on now. But when I liquidated everything, I went to wholesaling.
Okay.
So DNA Investors is the wholesaling side.
Right. Now, for those who don't know, what exactly is wholesaling?
So wholesaling that made me lazy a little bit, but what it did was when I liquidated everything, I didn't have to do no more fix and flips and all of that. What I do is I put a buyer and a seller together. I look for a property and I put a formula together, and we look for off-market properties at discounted rates, because investors want discounted properties. Otherwise, they could just get them on the MLS or go through a realtor. Okay. So what I did was I took DNA, made it a wholesaling company, and I just basically, everything I buy now, if I don't want it, because I got the best seat in the house, I could either keep it or I could either assign what we call assign it off. So I got 2 VAs. I got 2 VAs that work for me. They're both in the Philippines. We target distressed properties. Distressed properties meaning probate, where someone may have lost a loved one. Right. Pre-foreclosure, tax liens, all of the things that create a situation that somebody needs to get out of the house and get a new start. So what we do is we add value by getting them out of that situation before they lose the property or before something happens. So what happens is, like I said, I have the best seat in the house, because now I can decide whether I want to keep the property or if I just want to just assign it off. And lately, I just have been assigning a lot of properties off and not really keeping them, because I got comfortable at making the quick cash. I mean, 5,000 here, 10K there on the deal, 7K here. So, I mean, I built that whole wholesaling business for that. And if someone wants to do more wholesaling and don't want to really get involved in just the real estate aspect of buying and holding or fixing and flipping, then that's what the wholesaling side that's why I have both businesses. The wholesaling side also sends over to the fix and flip or the buy and hold. So I can just buy it in DNA and then assign it over or switch it over to Higher Ground Global Investments if I hold it now. So
they, and I don't know who they is, but they are saying that we're about to face a recession. And so, as with your experience in this field, what things are you predicting are going to happen, over these next few months?
I've been listening to a lot of the news and some of the things that's being said, and my take on it is that everybody's going to always need a place to stay.
Right.
They're gonna always need a place to stay. So when one thing is not working, then be creative enough to know how to switch and change, change up and change gears and switch to something else. Now, with that being said, I do fix and flips, I do buy and holds, I do wholesaling. So I'm not just and I got rentals. So I'm not trying to. I'm trying to be more where I'm more multifunctional in that whole space of real estate.
Right.
What I would say this though is that for me, what's working is I'm going back into the secondary markets. I'm going back into the markets where you got lower income and you got middle class and lower middle class.
Okay.
And still trying to make something affordable for them without breaking the bank and having my lenders kind of like leverage what I want to do here and there.
Right.
That's the strategy I'm taking at it, because those are the people who's really gonna, really be impacted the most. And I think that rentals is gonna go up. I think it's gonna level itself out eventually. And when it levels itself out, they're raising the rates. I believe they're raising the rates for one, because they want to slow this market down.
Right.
It's going crazy. That my home right now, I got people wanting to buy it. I was going to sell.
Oh yeah.
So my thing is that it's going to correct itself. But just like I told you about the bubble in 2009 that I experienced, I held on to them, and I was still able to have a great outcome in the long run. So
well, good. Hey, you know what? I tell you what, before we get out of here, on the tickler, we have DNA Global Investors. When people visit your website, what will they see, and what can they do if they need to get more information? Okay,
so I'm on Instagram. My Instagram page is DNA Investors, and my website is DNA Global Investments. And you can actually go on the website. You can actually tap in with me on the website. You can also reach out to me in the email at dna.llc0356@gmail. And that's the quickest way to probably get me, either there or Instagram.
Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it. Hey, Mr. LaDarryl Woods from DNA Global Investors. Hey, he's built a portfolio. He's doing it. And so we want to thank you, brother, for taking the time today to, visit us here on Super Speak Sundays. We're always humbled to have, people who have built a foundation. They continue to build it, but also willing to share it. And I think that's very important as we continue to move in this life.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. No doubt. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is a great video, great information, because here's someone who started from just one property and has been able to make it into something that he probably didn't even dream of, but he kept grandmother in mind, and I think that's important. What gifts do you have? What has somebody done that's inspired you? You got to take up. You need to identify what that is, because we all have one life to live, and you know what? We have to make it great. Hey, if nobody's ever told you, or you haven't heard it lately, I want you to know that we love you, and we'll talk with you soon.